Hello, welcome everyone to our MCC and Me SALT webinar this evening. My name is Jenna Villatoro. I am one of the Human Resources Coordinators for MCC in the US. And I'm so glad you all could join us to hear more about this one-year program available through Mennonite Central Committee and how you can combine work experience with world experience through this program. We have some important details to share with you, some exciting panelists of past SALT participants to hear from, and we're really glad that you've all been able to join us. Just a quick agenda, and to say this will be both recorded and posted later if you'd like to listen to it again. And if you're on the call with us live, we'll also make sure those who registered get a copy of these slides to read through it again as well. But just a quick run through, we're going to talk about what is MCC, sort of what is the way that Mennonite Central Committee works, some of our values and philosophy, what is SALT, so some nuts and bolts and details of that program. Then the exciting part, we'll get to hear from some of our past participants about their experience. And then once you've heard from them and are maybe convinced you'd like to apply, we'll talk a little bit about the details of what the application process looks like. And then maybe if you're excited about MCC or an opportunity like this, and maybe it's not SALT, I'll give a quick nod to some of the other opportunities MCC has available. And then at the end, hopefully we'll have some time for question and answer. All of that in about 30 minutes. So we're so glad you're here and hope you'll hang with us. Just to say, if you think of questions at any point while I'm presenting or the panelists are speaking, there is a Q&A feature. You can feel free to just submit your question as you think of it. And then at the end, we'll read through those and hopefully have time to answer them all. So to start, like I said, what is MCC? So just in case you're here because the program sounded exciting, someone told you about it, but you're not really sure what our organization is, Mennonite Central Committee is a Christian nonprofit. We work internationally in kind of three main sectors of work. So delivering relief aid after both natural and man-made disasters such as war, development projects, which you'll hear quite a range of what that can look like in different contexts from some of our panelists, as well as peace initiatives. And so where does MCC work? We work in Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Latin America, as well as in North America. And some of our sort of philosophy or way of working is that we work through local partner organizations in the countries where we work. And we work with them by building their capacities to be able to function in their mission and vision of whether it's relief, development, or peace work. And there's three main ways that we work at building that capacity. One is through financial support or grant funding. The second is educational or training opportunities for those organizations. And then the last, and where you come in, we'll talk about with SALT, is actually placing a worker with that local organization in a role in some capacity where they have need, maybe needing a teacher, a social worker, someone to help with them, their own applying for grants, things like that. And then the last sort of how MCC works is we work through a model of our international workers being what we call fully funded volunteers. And I'll explain a little bit of what that looks like with the SALT program and the support that's available, but just to say that
es disponible para ustedes, no es
provides support for volunteers who serve with us. All right, and the program that you hopefully came to hear about tonight is SALT. So what is SALT? It is an 11-month cross-cultural experience, usually August to July, for Christian young adults 18 to 30 years old to serve around the world in those three sectors we talked about. So relief, development, and peace building. Just to name, as we are in here at the end of 2020 that, of course, COVID is still a reality in our world. And we are hoping that from 2021 to 2022, this program will run as normal, August to July, though at this point we cannot fully predict that. I can say that there is a cohort even this current year serving. It's a bit smaller. They went a bit later in October this year, but we are cautiously hopeful that we will have a large amount of placements for the upcoming year. Second, detail about SALT. Like I've mentioned, MCC works mostly through local partner organizations. So these placements also would be likely with an organization in country. There's an asterisk there because some placements are directly working for MCC in an MCC office. That would be like a communications placement, helping tell stories with social media, things like that for the country program, or potentially a program monitoring role where you're actually evaluating some of the work being done with those partner organizations. And then the third kind of high level point for what is SALT is we also have a value on placing SALTers in some type of community living setting. Sometimes that's with a host family, sometimes that's in teacher housing at a university or something like that. Sometimes that's in a migrant house, if that's what your placement is with. And we've just really seen that that helps with relationship building, cultural learning, kind of having a guide when you're new in a community, language learning, all of those aspects. And about the positions, so there's assignments every year in over 30 countries across all of those regions where I said that MCC works. And just to name, this is a program for young adults from the US or Canada to go serve in these regions. We would also have a mirror program. If you are actually listening to this and are from a country outside of the US or Canada, we do have one-year program under a different name, not SALT, it would be IVEP or Yamen, but please contact us if you have questions about that. And we have assignments in a wide range of categories each year. So this is not comprehensive, and you'll hear snapshots of a few types of placements from our panelists, but just to name a few, in refugee and migrant assistance, conservation agriculture, public health and nursing, education, social work and counseling, communications and storytelling, peace building and advocacy, sustainable livelihood support, finance, such as grant writing, and then this PMER is what I had referenced in talking about, like program monitoring, evaluating, reporting type roles. So a wide range of possible assignments. And then just to talk a little bit about the support offered through SALT. Again, I referred to this fully funded volunteer model. So to break down a little bit of what that looks like for SALT, during the program, MCC would cover all travel, so to from assignment and needed for the assignment, medical costs, food and living costs for participants. In addition to that, you receive a monthly stipend and a worker care allowance. And if you're in university or have loans from university, we also help with educational loan assistance for your months of service and for 3 months after completing the program. And in order to provide that support, we do ask SALTers to help with some fundraising. So telling some people that you're going to have this volunteer opportunity, would they be able to contribute? And the benefit you receive back is actually more than the fundraising amount. But some of the reason for that, one, in supporting MCC being able to continue to offer this, but also it's a support to you of having people that have contributed to your role and assignment are much more likely to reach out to support, to remember to pray, and things like that while you're serving. And then a few last fun benefits are there's regular meetings of the MCC team in country, usually an annual retreat, which could involve travel to somewhere else with your team. And you also receive 10 vacation days during that year to use as you would like to maybe travel somewhere else in the region. So those are the basic details about SALT as kind of an overview. But we really wanted to make sure during this that you also get a chance to hear from some people who have served recently in a variety of assignments. We actually have 4 panelists tonight who each served in a different one of the regions where MCC places Salters. So we have Latin America, Africa, Asia, and Middle East represented. I have their names and roles here, but I think I'm actually gonna stop sharing and let them introduce themselves as part of my first question. So if I can even remember the order they were on there, I think I'll give you guys a heads up. For our first one, we'll go in the order Kate, Jake, Paula, Annalise. If you all could just introduce yourself, say where you served, what your assignment was, and maybe one quick highlight of that year. Go ahead, Kate.
So hello, yep, I'm Kate Weaver. I served in San Salvador, El Salvador, with the organization ANADES, or the New Dawn Association of El Salvador. And I worked in their early childhood education center as an assistant teacher. So I was working with little kids ages 1.5 to 6 in the different classrooms. And I think one highlight from that year was during the week of March, they celebrated Oscar Romero Week. And Oscar Romero is a Catholic, was a Catholic archbishop who was from El Salvador and did a lot of great work in El Salvador. And he was recently made a saint as well. And so every year at the school, they celebrate him. And it was really cool learning more about him and the history of El Salvador with the little kids at the preschool.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jake Gulanello. I served in Kigali, Rwanda, with the Peace and Development Network, or PDN. You'll probably hear me refer to them as. There, I was a project assistant for a conservation agriculture project and a livelihoods project that was microfinance based. There's so many highlights, but to choose one, a friend and colleague of mine got married during my term, and he asked me to be one of his groomsmen. So I got to experience a Rwandan wedding from the inside, which is certainly an experience I'll never forget.
Yeah, so I'm Paula. I served in Beirut, Lebanon as the emergency response assistant for Lebanon and Syria. And I worked actually directly in the MCC office, although there were 2 other Salters during my term who worked directly with a local partner. But I had more of a PMER role, like Jenna mentioned a little bit earlier. One of the huge highlights for me, again, like Jake said, it's hard to choose just one, but one of them was my host community. My placement didn't have a host family specifically, but I entered Lebanon on a student visa, and I lived at a seminary in Beirut alongside students from throughout the region who were there studying and training for ministry, and who would go on to lead churches in Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, and even Armenia. And so this provided a really rich and diverse and loving place to be growing and immersing myself in culture, and also to practice my language learning for sure.
Good evening to you all. My name is Annalise, and I served in Battambang, Cambodia in a first-time assignment at the Cambodia Peace Gallery. One of the biggest projects I worked on in this position was creating my own exhibit, actually focused on how the traditional Cambodian arts and music has helped with the Cambodian recovery from the Khmer Rouge genocide. As has been said, there have been so many highlights, and I think one of them for me was just getting to know my local community through the Peace Museum and asking what their needs were, and then seeing how I could empower them to really help themselves almost. So this included befriending monks, and even getting my own host family included, since they too were Khmer Rouge genocide survivors.
Thanks to all 4 of you. So as I'm sure our participants heard, there's quite a wide range of what an experience with SALT could look like. And Yeah, some great memories made for sure. So the next question is one we get a lot, and I think we'll kind of go in the same order, but maybe shift over one. So Jake first, and we'll go around, give you guys a heads up before I read it. So this question is about kind of both the process of raising support prior to SALT, like how was that fundraising process? That's one that I know some people are nervous about. And then also, how did you find the support available from MCC during service? So that could be financial, but also like safety and well-being, like support with that, checking in, things like that.
Sure. I definitely remember being a bit intimidated by the fundraising when I was first signing up to do SALT. But it wasn't really an issue for me. Coming from a very supportive church family, my community was very excited to give me that financial support to have this experience. And SALT is such a unique thing that when I would tell people about the experience that I was planning to have, people just saw that it was unique and different, and I think that encouraged them also to give me that financial support. So the fundraising process, thankfully, it was not a big issue. Regarding the support in country from MCC, the country reps, they lived in the same city as me, so I got a lot of direct support from them. I was able to have dinners at their house sometime. I got regular emails and check-ins from them via video call also. So I never really felt like I was struggling on my own at any point in time during my term.
Yeah, so I think the support that MCC offers throughout the entire journey of preparing for SALT and after returning is really great. Like Jake mentioned, fundraising can be a daunting task for sure, but I think MCC provides resources and ideas to get people started and is there along the way for additional support. I also personally, I teamed up with another friend of mine who was doing SALT the same year, and we created a t-shirt campaign, and that was, yeah, cool. So I think it also, like Jenna mentioned, is a really great opportunity to be creative and to build the community that you're going to want to have beside you and with you in the journey, even if they're here, physically back home. So yeah, and so like there were a lot of benefits mentioned. So in terms of like monetary benefits and the stipend that you receive, I was living in Beirut, so this is a little different and unique. So it felt, maybe a little bit thinner than some of my friends who were in Egypt, for instance, but I think it also allowed me to connect even more deeply and relate better with the local students in my host community at the seminary I was at. And also, in particular, the student loan support they provide was a big benefit for me and really advantageous and something that was unique from other service experiences that I had looked into. And as well as that, providing that 3 months afterwards when you return home, I think gives you a really good buffer to adjust and was really helpful for me as well. Something I got asked about a lot and still get asked sometimes is about the safety, being in the Middle East, being in Beirut, but MCC definitely provided a lot of support in this as well. And I never felt unsafe living in Beirut, and it's actually one of the safer cities I've ever lived in, and safer than some here in the US for sure. But also because MCC had safety plans and guidelines in place and helped us prepare for those in case anything were to happen. So overall, I think all of the support and the ways that MCC comes alongside you is really great.
That was a really comprehensive answer. Thanks, Paula. I would say that I found the fundraising process to be a lot of work for sure, but it was also a really great time of reconnecting with impactful people in my life. So for example, whether they were past high school teachers or current college friends or people I worked with years ago, I just kind of put it up to the Lord and was like, okay, I'm going to ask these people, and in my trust of him, he will return with his faithfulness as always. And so I actually found that with each person I asked, it helps me mentally prepare for my time working with SALT, because it made it a little bit more real of, oh my goodness, I am moving 9,000 miles away, but it's okay because I have this community that is going to support me, and I have the Lord who's providing every step of the way for me. And I actually found that I was over fundraised by the time that I was ready to leave, which totally surprised me because I had never done a fundraising campaign before. Once I got there, as Paula and Kate have said, I felt really safe, surprisingly. And maybe it was just the nature of Southeast Asia, where they're not really an aggressive people. I do sometimes feel less safe in Washington, D.C. right now, where I'm living, versus in Cambodia. But also the safety practices were made really clear to me. And I was actually living 7 hours away from the rest of the MCC team. And so I kind of had to form my own community that would look out for me. So I remember my host dad, he helped me fix my flat tire because I didn't have like the MCC repairman to do it and so on. But MCC gave me that family to watch over me and to help me. And I think what's cool about MCC is that there's layers of support. So there were the country representatives I stayed with when I went to Phnom Penh. Then there was my fellow Yemeners, who we actually did a lot of traveling together and were some of my best friends and still are. And then there was my family that made sure that I made it home each night.
Yes, so I would definitely echo that the fundraising process went very smoothly for me, fortunately. My church community and my family and my friends were all very helpful and supportive when I talked with them about SALT and with helping me fundraise. I did do one thing for people that donated to support me. If they donated a certain amount, I would give them a set of handmade cards as a extra incentive for them to donate to my SALT service year. But overall, it went very smoothly, so I'm very grateful for that. In terms of support from MCC during service, it was something I was a little nervous about because serving in El Salvador, I was actually the only MCC service worker in El Salvador that year, since El Salvador is with Guatemala for the MCC program, and the MCC office is in Guatemala City. And so I was a little nervous being the only MCC worker in the country. But it turns out I had nothing to worry about. The teachers at Anades, which is the organization I served with, were very welcoming, and my host family was very welcoming, and all of them made sure that I created and formed a community in San Salvador that I could reach out to for support. And then also my MCC team was very considerate about making sure to reach out to me. My Connecting Peoples coordinator made sure to reach out to me and to check in with me continuously to see how I was doing. And they also created opportunities for me to go to Guatemala City for holidays such as Thanksgiving, and so we could celebrate those as an MCC team, and those were really special times for me as well. So it started out feeling a little nervous, but I was able to form a really good community in the country, and I felt very supported by my MCC team.
Yeah, thank you all for hopefully helping alleviate a few of those common nervous points. I know another one is often sort of about future beyond SALT. Like, if I do SALT, what does this sort of help with? What's next? So start maybe with Paula for this last question and go around. Just if you could share what you're doing now, and because I think it was in the Q&A down here as well, maybe where you are now. So where you are now, what you're doing, and how that was shaped by SALT.
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently I am living in Buffalo, New York, working at a refugee resettlement and service agency. My position falls under our employment department. And so I work with all of our clients who after their initial 90 days here up until they reach their 5-year mark. So I provide case management and work to alleviate barriers that they might face for employment and work to empower them towards self-sufficiency. So I completed my SALT term in July 2019. So I've been home for about a year and a half, I guess. And I can say that I'm still discovering new ways that my SALT experience shaped me professionally in terms of all the PMER work I did, and also other ways, but personally and spiritually too. My SALT placement was in Lebanon, but I also worked on MCC's projects in Syria as well, because there's no office there. And if you combine those two countries and programs, you'll see an enormous number of refugees being served by those two programs. Lebanon actually hosts the largest number of refugees per capita in the entire world. And Syria has an immense number of internally displaced people and seriously vulnerable host communities as well. So with that being said, when I came back to the States that I wanted to continue to be involved in this work in some capacity, and I was really blessed that God opened the opportunity for me to do so here.
So my SALT term ended actually March of 2020. It ended a little early because of COVID, but as we have said earlier, MCC really did all that they could to make our transition a little bit earlier, or as smooth as possible. And I think one of the things that made it as smooth as possible was the skills that I learned and how applicable they were to the job market and to applying for jobs in graduate school. So while I was in Cambodia, the host organization that sponsors the Cambodia Peace Gallery actually offered for me to start their master's in peace and conflict studies. So right now I'm working to finish that program, which is more of a part-time thing. And while I was in Cambodia, I also was applying for graduate schools in museum and cultural heritage studies. So I'm working on that program at Florida State University. But since my classes were put online, I moved up to DC and am interning at the Woodrow Wilson House, which is where President Woodrow Wilson lived after his presidency. So I was really surprised that in a time of craziness and almost like economic depression, that doors were opening. And I really have SALT to thank me a lot for that.
So I am currently in my second year as a 6th grade English teacher at one of the public middle schools in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And I definitely think that serving with little children in a school setting with my SALT placement definitely helped prepare me for my teaching career. And it especially helped confirm my calling to be a teacher and my desire to be a teacher. Just being able to observe the teachers in the preschool and see how committed they were to the children and providing a safe and caring and fun atmosphere helped remind me how rewarding teaching can be. It can definitely be hard. I saw the hard aspects too, but just how rewarding it can be as well. And just reminded me of the fundamentals of a teacher no matter what age, because there's a big difference between teaching preschoolers and teaching early middle schoolers. But it just reminded me of the fundamentals of making sure that my students feel loved and heard and feel safe in the classroom.
So I'm currently in Massachusetts. I'm living with my parents. I recently got back from my SALT term. I started in 2018, but I had the opportunity to extend my contract for a second year, which was a really exciting opportunity to keep on with the partner organization I was with. So now I'm applying to graduate school. And SALT has shaped kind of this process in quite a few different ways. First of all, just having the experience of being put in a country, having the field work, it was a very affirming experience for me. I was hoping that it was God's call for me to do this type of work, and having the opportunity to do it firsthand with MCC well, it was very affirming. And secondly, as I'm working on these applications, having the firsthand experience, the amount of exposure MCC gives to this type of work, really it stands out on a resume, on a grad school application. I'm sure as Annalise has seen for herself. So for me, that's where I'm really, really thankful for MCC, because as a college graduate, without a lot of experience in the international development world, MCC still gave me a chance to do this work firsthand, kind of be thrown in the middle of it all, but still in a very supportive community that was very forgiving of mistakes I was making, but also just encouraged the entire learning process. So I'm so thankful for the experience with MCC.
Thank you so much to all of you for sharing from your experience. And we're getting some good questions in the chat too. I know we're close to the time that we had said, so I just want to go through a little bit of how to apply, what would be next, and then we'll circle back around to see if any of those are still unanswered. Go ahead and re-put this slide up. So you might be attending with other people in mind who might be good candidates. You might not be thinking to apply for a few years, but especially if you're thinking about this for the upcoming year or really want to have some of these details just to go through, you can find a lot more information on our website at mcc.org/SALT. Easy enough to remember. I'll say it again, mcc.org/SALT. Again, we'll also send something as a follow-up after this, so that information will be in there. Just to kind of go through the timeline and process, applications normally open for the following SALT year mid to late fall, so October to November, around there. And it's a bit of a two-step process. So you apply first to the program wanting to serve with SALT for a year, and you can see some placements at that point, depending when you're applying. If you're applying later, most of them will already be posted. They get posted throughout the fall. And then so based on that initial application, references, and kind of a screening conversation, you'll be notified about being accepted into the SALT program, at which point we are committing to find a placement that is a good fit for you. So it's accepting to the program, and then from there, you'll talk about sort of which placements and which locations most appeal to you. Then your file is shared with MCC in country. Some of the panelists talked about country representatives, as well as the organization they worked for. That file gets shared with them, and you'll actually interview with them directly. And they'll decide from their end if that sounds like a good fit for the placement they have available. And you can decide also from your end if that feels like a good fit. Maybe you'd like to interview another place. And again, we work with you to find that placement. The placement process with specific country programs and organizations starts in early January. So though the deadline to apply to SALT is mid-February, we do always encourage participants or interested candidates to apply as early as possible, just because placements will start to fill up as people get placed. So the earlier you apply and kind of can get your preference on a placement, you may be more likely to get one you've had an eye on. I know there was a question in the chat about if placements repeat each year. There are similar placements year to year, and particularly with COVID, as I heard acknowledged in the question as well, there are some that maybe are not possible right now due to impact on partners, also MCC budget in country. But just to say, like, there are a lot of similar placements each year, but not always the exact same one. Some of that is MCC is working at capacity building. So if the partner had someone helping teach them how to apply for grant funding, and they've now trained someone on staff to do that, they may not need another salter. That's one reason, or just shifting, any dynamics with the partner. But there are often similar field type of placements, just potentially in a different location. So if you were hearing this and thinking like, no, I'd actually like to serve longer than a year, that doesn't seem like enough for this great experience. Just to say, we have other opportunities available through MCC. We're doing a series into the new year as well of these webinars on MCC and me. And there's a few about our service worker positions, which are longer term international placements. We also sometimes have more like administrative program roles domestically that would be longer term. And we also have some short-term domestic opportunities sometimes. They're internships or summer placements, things like that. So certainly check out our website, our current openings listing at any point. You might be interested even in something other than SALT. But if you are convinced that it's SALT, or at least you're curious and want to start or continue the conversation, again, go to mcc.org/SALT, contact us, respond to our follow-up email. We're always happy to meet with someone who's interested in discerning. That could be with someone like myself for more of those specific details. And even if you want to talk to a past participant, again, as I hope you could hear from our panelists, most of them are very excited. All of the ones here are very excited to share more about their experience. So thank you so much to everyone for joining. I'm going to see, I think we can take a couple more minutes. Hopefully, if you need to go, we understand. Just to answer a few more of your questions. So if you think of them, feel free to send them in. We'll see how many of these we can get answered. Yeah, so someone is asking, this can be for any panelist who one jumps to mind, about a challenge you had while on assignment that shaped your worldview or your character today. Anyone can jump in.
I can share. So I think one challenge during my year was I actually switched host families halfway through the year due to health issues in my first host family. And so due to my first host family and the health issues there, they needed just more time to rest, and they weren't able to fully support me. And so I actually ended up changing host families. And it was definitely a challenge because I had adjusted to that living with that host family, and I had really come to love living with that host family, and they had been a great support to me. And so it was definitely hard to change and move to a new host family. But I definitely, I think I learned a lot from that moment. First, by just asking for help and like asking for more support from my MCC team, and like having them reciprocate and give me that support that I needed as I changed host families. But I think it also just helped me with my flexibility when I'm faced with something unexpected. I used to not really like change or not really like unexpected things, and I still don't love it. But I feel like from that just unexpected challenge of having to suddenly switch host families, I've become a lot better about dealing with change and dealing with things when I have to be flexible. And it turned out I really enjoyed my second host family, and they actually had a dog, which my first host family did not. And so I really enjoyed that element too.
Thanks, Kate. That's a great example. Does anyone else have one more that they really wanted to jump in with? If not, maybe a bit of a different direction with that, even like a piece of advice you would have or something you wish someone told you before you did SALT.
I think a piece of advice is remember that God doesn't open a door for you that you're not prepared for ahead of time. That I think with something like SALT, the doors open because it really is where you're meant to be developed and to grow next.
Yeah, I think for time, we'll maybe wrap up soon. If anyone has one last piece of advice, if not, thank you so much for all the great stories and different creative ways that you worked at SALT and beyond, how it had an impact. And again, we'll send something following up. So if you have additional questions you didn't get a chance to ask this evening for me or for one of our panelists, I can get it to them as well. Yeah, thank you so much. And we know, just to say, I always say this in conversation with those considering SALT, like it is a big decision to decide to move internationally for a year of your life. I'm excited and encouraged to see questions about that, wanting that to be longer. That always excites me, but I'm also just thrilled that someone is on this call even considering giving a year of their life to try something different. And clearly God can use that to shape and grow us in so many ways. So thank you again for joining. And on behalf of MCC, we hope to hear from you again soon. Thanks.